It's always just between us, all right?
Welcome into Between Us on 938 Live. You're listening to the show where we share real issues that inspire you and also explore relationship topics that are close to your hearts. And speaking of which, today my guest is Cheryl Ng. She's master trainer with focus on the family, and she's going to tell us a bit more about how to build a strong family and create a positive home environment, especially when it comes to relating to your teens and how to also set certain boundaries while maintaining that strong relationship. If you have any questions for Cheryl, do give us a ring, 669-11938. We'd love to chat with you as well. Cheryl, it's so great to have you on the show.
Hi, Angela, and hello to all the listeners out there.
Now, Cheryl, not only are you a parenting trainer, you also have kids of your own. Now, tell us a bit about yourself.
Oh yes, I've got 4 of them, and they range from 15 to 22, 23. Yes.
Wow, so you've been through, and it's still going through, I guess, the teenage years, so very well placed to tell us more about some great tips. Now, speaking of, the principles that you've been espousing over the years as a trainer as well, I hear about this very interesting sounding ABCDE principle. Tell us more about how that creates a positive home environment for us.
Okay, in the Parenting with Confidence course, for Focus on the Family, we actually have these principles, the A standing for atmosphere, which is about having a fun and a loving atmosphere in their home, so the kids, they really feel that it's a warm place that they want to come back to. The B stands for the boundaries that we give our children. In fact, boundaries give the children a sense of security so that they know what's expected of them by their parents, by society, what's right and wrong, and they won't be at a loss. And then the C stands for communication, which is always about the two-way street. So while we want to tell the kids what we think and what they should do, at the same time, the kids should be able to share with us their feelings and what the feedback they have about what's happening in their home or in their own lives. D is for discipline, which is really teaching the kids about the fact that choices that they make, actions that they take, all have consequences. And I think it's one of the most important principles in their lives that they can carry through in their lives.
Setting boundaries, as parents as well. What is the E?
Well, the E is about esteem and self-esteem, because when you teach a child to love himself, well, then you're really equipping this child for life.
This is very fascinating. We're covering quite a lot of ground today, and I think for a lot of parents who are currently, working with their teens, what are some of the common issues that you've experienced when you come across, people who ask you for help, Cheryl? What are some of the biggest headaches, the biggest issues that tend to come up?
Well, I think one of them is about teenagers not talking to the parents anymore.
The stonewalling, right?
Yes, because, but it's really a part of their growing up, because, they need to connect more with their friends, and it's part of the DNA, so-called, of teenagers, how they're wired, and they just need to make friends, to get out into the world, to know what their peers are thinking. So because they are able to share with their friends, so they find a less of a need to talk to their parents. And some parents who have been communicating with their children find that the change very bewildering. And I think one important way for us to continue in this communication is to, not just to talk to them or talk down to them, but to really want to listen to them and genuinely do so that the children will feel a desire to share their lives with us.
Right. Yes. So for a start, Cheryl, before we get into the principles, and I think it's really great that we can dissect, these elements of a good relationship with your teens, one by one. But should parents be concerned? So you're saying it's actually quite a normal thing if your teenager is suddenly shutting down on you, not wanting to talk. You're saying, is it something parents should be concerned about, or should we just, on some level, take it in our stride, I think?
Well, in both ways, it's true. I think partly we shouldn't be, interrogating them and getting them to talk when they don't want to talk, and to give them some space so that they can connect with their friends. But at the same time, we shouldn't say that, they are old enough and I'm getting out to do my own stuff. And we shouldn't leave them on their own. We should really still be there for them, and then to encourage them to talk a little bit so that we can still find out how they're getting on in their lives and what they're doing.
That's the tough part, isn't it, Cheryl? The balance between being concerned but not intrusive, and at the same time, giving them space but not being avoidant of the fact that the relationship is not really working very well. So we're going to take a look at the ABCDE principle today and how you can apply that very directly to your relationship with your teenager, and also how to create a positive family environment. All this coming right up with my guest, Cheryl Ng. She's master trainer with Focus on the Family. If you have any tips for us as well, you can share with us at 669-11938, or if you're currently encountering a conflict or a problem with regard to relating to your teen, you can call us on the studio hotline as well. well. 669-11938. We'll continue in just a bit.
Reset your relationships in Between Us. Our soulful encounter is always just between us on 938 Live.
Master trainer with focus on the family, Cheryl Ng is in the studio today. She's sharing with us some great tips and principles with regard to how to create a positive and strong family home environment. Also with how to establish boundaries and negotiate with our teens for a great relationship. Now, Cheryl, you mentioned the ABCDE principle just now. Very simple ways to start building that great relationship with your child. The A, of course, stands for atmosphere. Tell us a bit more about how to create a great atmosphere at home for your teenager.
Right. Actually, I think a great example was, my father. While I remember him being very strict and, very sure that he wants us to do well in school, but at the same time, he always made time to take us out. And I remember those trips out to Sentosa, and even every weekend almost, we go to the school field near our home to play with a ball. So it's, really spending time with the children and letting the children know how much you love being with them and how much you like doing things with them. In fact, there is this, from the studies has shown that the children, they don't remember so much of what you do for them and maybe some of what you do with them, but they remember the kind of feeling you gave them when they were growing up.
Right. So at the end of the day, it's not so much about what you say or do specifically, how much money you spend, exactly how much time you spend with the child as well, but how you make your child feel. And the very important part to doing that is creating a very positive atmosphere. What does a positive atmosphere look like, Cheryl? Because if many of our parents now are reflecting on what's happening in their families, what should it look like?
Well, one of the important things is to really, is linked to the self-esteem bit, where you actually have to let your child know that you accept him or her for the unique person that he is. You also appreciate what they do in life, what they make, the choices they make that are right. At the same time, also being, there for them, to show them your love, which is their affection. So you need to give them attention. You need to show affection. At the same time, also teaching them about accountability. But this teaching is not so much about, forcing them to do things.
Lecturing.
No, not so much that. But letting them recognize that they have responsibilities in different things, from the little things of, making sure they do their own homework, to even then taking care of the siblings in the home.
Right.
Yeah, so those things are all important. And at the same time, I think the parents have to be able to give the children a say in how that the rules come about as they grow up. I think more and more of that is important, so that the children don't feel that they are being forced to do things. Rather, they feel that, it's very, democratic at home. We have a choice, within the parents' boundaries, of course. Yeah,
I think sometimes what you commonly find with an atmosphere that's very tense, that's very strained at home, is that when the child kind of backs off and feels like, whatever I say, you're not going to listen anyway, so I'm just going to stop talking. So from that very strained or very tense environment, and of course you have the other side, which is conflict. You're constantly fighting. How can we start moving away from a bad atmosphere, so to speak, into something a little bit more positive? What are some first few steps you can take?
Well, I would say that, stop bugging them, because like
don't nag.
They're not listening. They're not listening. They're just shutting off when you keep going at it. And, just want to share an interesting example from one of our workshops where, there was a mom who was really having a bad time, a difficult period with a child, with a daughter. And so as an exercise in our workshop, she had to write a list of things that she feels good about her daughter, to affirm her daughter. So she made the list, despite her feelings, she thought about what was good and why she loved the child. And then when she went home, she decided, in a good step, to stick this little note on the daughter's mirror. And so, it caused a change in tone, because the daughter realized that my mom doesn't hate me. My mom doesn't want to, shove things at me. She really does love me. And there are these things that she thinks positively of me. And it did change the tone in the relationship.
Sometimes it's really about the way we're communicating, isn't it? If you're hitting a rut when it comes to talking to the child, like you mentioned, Cheryl, writing a note is a great other way to explore communicating, because sometimes things are hard to say when you're all very upset and things are tense. But putting a simple note on the mirror, for example, can really change the trajectory of your whole relationship.
Yes.
We're going to find out more about how also to set boundaries with your teen without alienating yourself from your child as well. And also communication when it comes to discipline and building self-esteem. All this as part of the ABCDE principle that we're going to find out more about when it comes to establishing a great relationship with your teens by creating a positive home atmosphere. My guest today is Cheryl Ng, who's Master Trainer with Focus on the Family, and Cheryl has some great tips coming your way. Also, call in if you want to ask us any questions about dealing with your teens. 669-11938 will return in just a moment.
Someone to tell it to is a fundamental human need, and what you say stays between us. It's always just between us, all right?
I've been chatting today with my guest Cheryl Ng, who's Master Trainer with Focus on the Family, and she's been telling us so far a little bit more about how to connect better with your teen, also how to create a positive home environment. And Cheryl, we've been exploring the ABCD principles so far, and we chatted earlier about creating a great environment, a great atmosphere,
yes,
which is the A in the principle. Now, before we go into boundaries, of course, we want to kind of relate this to your personal experiences as a parent as well. 4 teens you've been through and currently still going through with your last child. What have some of the experiences been like? Because each teenager is going to be different. They have different issues, different needs. What are some of the things you've had to do with regard to drawing boundaries for them?
Well, I think when we think about drawing boundaries, it's not really just setting a rule, because the teenagers will begin to ask you why, and they may even feel that it's not necessary or relevant in their lives. But we have to still continue to put that rule in place if we think it's important, because it's really about loving our children, and we don't want them to make the wrong choices and do the wrong things that will ruin their lives. And so with our Parenting with Confidence course, we actually have a tool called the V of Love. And this V of Love actually enables us to teach the children certain boundaries, which is, if you look at the arms of the V, they represent the boundaries we give the children, and the space between the V, that's the freedom of choice that the children are allowed as they grow. And you can see that this freedom increases with their age as they grow into more maturity. And I think that's important, because we can't be holding them back all the time.
Right, so it's striking that balance between setting the rules, and of course the word rules is like a horrible word for teenagers, because the minute you mention boundaries or rules, it's natural instinct for someone going to their teenage years to want to challenge it. So we can, in a way, how can we put these boundaries up without making it sound like we're limiting them or we're stopping them from being who they are?
Yes, I think, that's where the communication comes in, because that's when you got to talk with the children to discuss with them why these boundaries are important, why you are putting them in place, and, in the way we always use the word for your own good, but you could explain it properly so that they will accept it.
Why is it for your own good, I think is the question.
Yeah, so I think, I think one of the things that the kids are always try to get more and more of is a later curfew time. And so, so with our oldest child, we actually, when she was in her mid-teens, 15, 16, we set a time of 9:30 for the weekends. But as she went into the junior college and they began to have this kind of cook and eat parties at people's houses, she sat down and said, "Mom, you're making me an outcast, because nobody wants to invite me. By the time we finish cooking, I've got to go home." So we realized that we were a little bit too tight. So we extended the time to 10:30. And of course, when she went to the uni, it was, latest is 12 o'clock. Yeah, so we actually moved it, because we need to negotiate with her. She needs to let us know why as well. She needs to push the boundary back.
When it comes to negotiating, I think these are waters that a lot of parents are, very reluctant to step into, because you're afraid that the child might step over you sometimes and kind of get their way. What is a good way to conduct or to kind of start a negotiation? Because as a parent, you do have a say, in a sense, of how things should be done. But how do we include the teenager and let the teenager have something to say as well?
Well, we could bring it up as a kind of discussion and ask them for their views or feedback on what has been taking place already so far. And of course, we as parents, we also need to find out. It's good to have parents groups and friends with other parents, so we can find out what other people are going through and what's relevant and appropriate, and that helps us in our decisions. And one of the things is attending a parenting workshop that actually allows you to learn from the experts, at the same time to also engage with other parents who are going through the same issues in their lives.
Especially when it comes to negotiating, the communication style is very important, because if you're thinking in the mentality of I'm the parent, I'm telling you what to do, it's not really going to work out. So if you could paint a scenario for us, an example of how you've managed to successfully negotiate something with your child and it's been a win-win, what would some of these examples be?
Well, besides this curfew issue, I think for many parents now is an issue with social media, with the handphones, with the computers. Yeah, so that is a real big issue with our teenagers right now. And I think if your child is very good and knows how to set his own time and really stick to it and work out with his homework well, that's fine. But if you have a child who's just become addicted or who's beginning to have a problem with overspending time on the social media, then it's time to actually set some boundaries in place if you haven't already done so. This may mean talking to the child about the time that is appropriate for going online, whether it is after homework is done, or it's a certain amount of time that he has on the weekday night or weekend evenings or weekends. Yeah, so these have to be talked through, and let the child tell you what is important, what's necessary, and at the same time you share your views as well. And it may be, if for a child who is already too much addicted, it may mean that, well, we are going to actually help you and talk to the child about helping this child, whether it's putting the handphone away, switching it off, or making sure the computer is not switched on until the parent is at home, so that there can be some guidance. But these may be necessary, but your child must buy in. So you've got to talk about the benefits and the disadvantages as well.
When it comes to talking, I think that's something that we all need to work on, whether it's picking the right time, whether it's how we say the things we want to say, especially when it comes to setting boundaries or discipline. But when we talk about online worlds, and of course, earlier you mentioned, Cheryl, writing notes is another way to communicate well with your child. In the online world, very unfamiliar waters for many parents. How can we kind of straddle the line between being friendly and not being intrusive?
Yes, I think it's important for parents to be a part of their children's lives, both offline and online. So if parents are not on the computers, not in social media, maybe it's time to learn from maybe some workshops in community centers or from their friends or spouses and so on. Yeah, so I would suggest one way is to see what kind of a platform your child is on, whether it's on Twitter or Facebook, and be their friend on it, be their follower on it, so that you let your child know that you're not there to sort of check on them, but really to be a part of their lives. If they can share their lives with their friends, why not with their family and their loved ones? And then, of course, when you're there, don't make comments that, hurt them or, show your shock and, anger at what they've done. Maybe you have to take these offline, but what you put online could be encouraging comments and liking what they are doing that's good, and, seeing them enjoying themselves, doing the right things.
I think a lot of times, when the young people are, afraid of their parents being online or being in their online world, is that they would be embarrassed by things that their parents say. So as you mentioned, Cheryl, if we are mindful of what we're saying, of how, people should conduct themselves online, it's very unlikely you're going to embarrass your child. And there are many teenagers, I'm sure, who are more than happy to be Facebook friends, to be on Instagram, to be on Twitter with their parents as well. So it's about learning the right ways to communicate on these platforms. You mentioned earlier also, Cheryl, the idea of discipline, and that comes with D in the ABCDE principle, right? This is the tricky part. How do you put your foot down, be the bad cop sometimes without losing your child?
I think one thing parents fear with regard to discipline is that if the two parties, mom and dad, are not together, that's important for them to work out these things on their own first before they come to make a stand before the children. So it's not to fight in front of the children about these things and let the children know who to go to get what they want. And parents got to work this out. And when you talk about discipline, it's really about teaching the child that when he makes a choice, there is a consequence. So in the case that we had, in fact, just this week with my youngest, she's 15 and taking her O-levels this year, coming to 16 she is, and she's a big reader. So, and even as she studies, she likes to flip through some books to just reread an old chapter. So she's got her books all over the place. So I would give her, an ultimatum after, telling her twice. I say, well, you've got to clear those books or I'll clear them for you. So, well, after the third warning and she still didn't take heed, did what I call home improvement one night, and all her books were gone. She was really, really upset. But then that's when so I was playing the bad cop,
Right.
So that's when Daddy came in, tried to calm her down and tell her, look, Mom's given you the ultimatum, but you didn't do it. So ask her to come and apologize and talk about, conditions in which she will be allowed to get her books back.
That's a great example. I think that really illustrates the importance of there being balance, even within the parenting team, the father and the mother, whichever you choose to be, the bad cop or the good cop, there should be some balance. It shouldn't be both parties being really hard on the child, which would send them away. But you should also stand your ground as parents when it comes to things you want to teach your children also. We're going to hit the final part of the ABCDE principle, building self-esteem, how to create a very positive energy, a very positive thinking teenager as well in your family. Today, my guest is Cheryl Ng, and she's master trainer for Focus on the Family. We're going to give you more great tips on how to build a positive relationship with your teenager. Final chance for you to call in if you like, 669-11938. Between Us will continue in a minute's time.
Reset your relationships in Between Us. Our soulful encounter is always just between us on 938 Live.
Thanks for staying tuned to Between Us and 938 Live. I've been chatting today with Cheryl Ng. She's master trainer with Focus on the Family, sharing today about having a positive relationship with your teenager. We've covered quite a lot, Cheryl, in terms of what we can do to build a good atmosphere, to build boundaries in a very good way by communicating well with each other, and of course, discipline. Parents have to stay a united team, and I guess balancing the good cop, bad cop act is very helpful as well. The final E is for esteem.
Yes.
How can we build a very positive self-esteem in our teens?
Yes, I think really, when you talk about building self-esteem, you have to be there to do it. So it's really about spending time with your children, giving them the attention that they need so that they know you are there for them. When they're in trouble, well, you will help them. So that's really important. Then on top of that is this whole atmosphere in the home where you encourage them, you affirm them for being, for choosing the right things to do, for making the right decisions. So the affirming is important. We've talked a little bit about that earlier. But at the same time, it's also the talking about how you show them your appreciation, to thank them for things that they helped out doing, or to just let them know that you are really so proud of them, you believe in them. So these things are important.
I think in a very simple way, Cheryl, if we're having problems communicating with a teen, there's a reason why your teen is not turning to you, whether it's to tell you something happy, whether it's to share problems. As parents, it's important to question why. And in creating the environment in a very positive way, being very encouraging, it's definitely going to bring your child back. So let's talk a bit about any final tips you have for us with regard to things we can start doing straight away if we want to improve that relationship with our teenager.
Well, I think then it's important for parents to know what they're supposed to do. So attending workshops is a good idea to find out more. At the same time, I think talking to the teenager and really allowing them to give their feedback and to tell you first what they feel rather than you telling them what they should do. That gives them the chance to air their views. And so they begin to talk to you about things that are happy, that are happening. In fact, one of my daughters, she's interning at MediaCorp right now with CNA. So in programs that she helps us as a production assistant, she's so happy to say, "Come, Mom, see, I was the doctor's hands in this show." So, she just want to share things with us.
And of course, we all want that in our families, to have the openness, to have the enthusiasm being shared, such that the environment is just so positive. So start with being present, being there. Listening is really important. And of course, as Cheryl was mentioning, if you want to find out more through parenting workshops, it's always great. There's no magic formula for being a perfect parent, but you can definitely equip yourself with these tools, with these tips on how to anticipate potential problems that come up. So if you want to find out more, you can always go to Focus on the Family's website. It's www.family.org.sg to find out more about upcoming workshops or more information as well about how to have great relationships with your family. www.family.org.sg. My guest today has been Cheryl Ng. She's master trainer with Focus on the Family. Cheryl, thanks so much for your tips.
Thank you for having me. It's been a privilege.
This has been Between Us on 938 Live. I'm Angela Lim. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Someone to tell it to is a fundamental human need, and what you say stays between us on 938 Live.